Hey everybody, Professor Doom here. This is the first installment of the Danny Casolaro Octopus document reveal. But we are going to, you guys know that I'm an evidence-driven channel. I'd like to show you guys the evidence of what I'm talking about rather than just talking about it. There have been other investigators related to this story who've exposed a lot about the death of Danny Casolaro and everything that he was investigating. I defer you to check out all of the information regarding Danny Casolaro because it's going to be beyond the scope of this presentation to get into everything that Danny Casolaro was investigating. In no way of what we're going to be presenting here is exhaustive. But what I do need to tell you is this. Danny Casolaro was involved in investigating a PROMIS software, prosecutorial management information system. I do believe that's what the acronym means. And it was created by Bill Hamilton of Inslaw. This program was stolen by the Department of Justice. Bill Hamilton commenced an investigation because the Department of Justice stole the program from him, put it in a backdoor, and started selling it to other countries. And it was being used all over the place. And you're going to see that in this presentation because I am going to make some interesting connections all the way from Danny Casolaro's investigation up to Vince Foster, past Vince Foster, and we're going to be taking a look at all the way to Podestas. Yes, that's what we're going to be doing in this very first presentation. Before we get into all of this, I want to show you guys some very interesting entries into Danny Casolaro's handwritten personal notes. And just for you all, in this cloud drive right here, you see this cloud drive, okay? That's my cloud drive right here. Here's the Casolaro files that I have for you. And all of that I'm going to be presenting is going to be in my cloud drive, and I'm going to leave a link for you all to download this for yourself and read everything that I have. And you're going to see some very amazing stuff that, as I stated, it's going to be beyond the scope of all the presentations because there's going to be 3 or 4 different presentations about information that's here that's going to lead us to Jeffrey Epstein. It's also going to lead us to satanic rituals and a child sacrifice with the Franklin cover-up because it involves the Bushes and it involves a kidnapped paperboy back from the 1980s named Johnny Gosch. These are just some of the presentations that are going to be involved with this story that I'm going to be releasing in the next couple of days. Let us take a look at some of the bizarre, interesting entries into the personal notes of Danny Casolaro. Temple of Robert Schuller. And look it over to the right-hand side in the box, and you're going to see Craig Spence and Larry King, Franklin S&L. I'm sure he means Franklin Credit Union because that's what it was. But as we're going to be taking a look in our next segment, we're going to be talking about Craig Spence of the White House Callboy Service story. And we're going to be taking a look at Larry King, because this all centers around a boy that was kidnapped in the 1980s named Johnny Gosch. And it just so happens that the individual that gave the information about the kidnapping of Johnny Gosch was involved in the Franklin cover-up. And Mrs. Noreen Gosch met with this Paul Bonacci individual, and she was absolutely 100% convinced that Paul Bonacci knew everything about her son's kidnapping, to the clothes he was wearing, and also to the mark on his chest arm area for his birthmark. So she was 100% convinced. And what is interesting how that all plays out is it leads us right directly to George Bush Jr. and the individual known as Jeff Gannon. But we will talk about that more in segment number 2. Interesting things to unpack in this particular one right here. Just take a look around, and what is interesting to me is the individual that is mentioned right underneath the phone number 683-5599. Middle left hand, upper left hand of the screen, you see the phone number, and look at the name that's right underneath there. I do not know why he has Pocahontas's name right there, Elizabeth Warren. Nor do I know why there is a certain presidential name that is right there on the right-hand side. If you look at the circled word, it looks like it says keep or keys, maybe keep. But if you look at the names are underlined, Diana Huffman, Biden, and there is an arrow leading right to his name, and Staff Director of Senate Judiciary. And I don't know what this means, but I did find a PDF in my search with these two names. Joseph R. Biden. And if you look down at the bottom 4 names right there, you'll see Diana Huffman is indeed the staff director. But I have no idea why he had their names in his personal notes. If you take a look down the middle of your screen, neo-Nazis all work, I'm not sure what they all work, Aleister Crowley, Colonel Michael Aquino, yes, that Michael Aquino, the Temple of Set, the satanic worshiper Michael Aquino from the army that was involved in the Presidio child sex story. We will be taking a look at that in the next segment. Right here, the order, the ultimate evil. Well, you see it all for yourself. Now, something I did find else interesting about Joe Biden, if you look at this over to your right-hand side, Earl Bryan, and then Michael was plugged into MKUltra trials, Springfield, Missouri. And take a look, and over to your left-hand side, Barry Seal. We are going to be talking about him either partly today, because we're going to be talking about what I believe got Danny Casolaro killed. It all is going to center around the state of Arkansas. And Barry Seal is all a part of the story of Mena, Arkansas. Let's take a look at the PDF regarding MKUltra. Pretty much the whole story revolving around Danny Casolaro has to do with the CIA. And this, the CIA project of MKUltra, the research and behavioral modification. And if we take a look at the individuals that were involved in the committee hearing on intelligence right here in 1977, these are the individuals. Daniel K. Inouye, if you guys remember that name, he was the senator who pretty much shut down Jack Brooks from asking Oliver North about the continuity of government that Oliver North and company had created, revolving around Rex 84 and Operation Garden Plot. He was the one who shut down Jack Brooks in his questioning of Oliver North. And if you take a look about the 5th name down on the left-hand side, you're going to see Joe Biden's name. Those are just some of the names that are interesting, because nothing even really came of MKUltra. We know about it, but did they do anything about it? And why didn't they? Well, maybe now you know why. Because of people like Daniel Inouye trying to cover up what's really going on. We'll talk more about Oliver North and the whole Operation Garden Plot and Rex 84 in another segment. Yes, the CIA name for Osama bin Laden. Robert Maxwell. Yes, Ghislaine Maxwell's father. And he was doing investigations on that. Now, finally, I'm going to show you that obviously throughout his notes, he mentioned Arkansas many times, especially when it relates to Barry Seal and just Arkansas as a whole. And now, let us begin with our presentation. What does a bank known as BCCI in Danny Casolaro's files have anything to do with Arkansas, have anything to do with the death of Vince Foster? What do they have to do with the person who pretty much bankrolled Bill Clinton's ascension to presidency? We're going to take a look at that. Let's take a look at all of the information that's going to lead us to there and beyond. BCCI, Bank of Credit and Commerce International, was all a part of the Iran-Contra. That was the part that Danny Casolaro was investigating, because that's exactly what all of the PROMIS software had led him into the investigation. October Surprise, the guns for drugs being shipped into the United States from Nicaragua, Panama. He was also investigating opium that was coming out of the Golden Triangle from a drug lord named Kun Sa. This was all of the stuff that Danny Casolaro was investigating. That is what is in his files. But what I want you to notice when we come down here of BCCI, intelligence agencies that were involved, Mossad, of course, Adnan Khashoggi is also mentioned in the handwritten notes of Mr. Danny Casolaro. I did not show you that, but it's most likely because I might be using him in a future, But I want you to take a look at this right here. U.S. takeover. Jackson T. Stevens. Who is he? Why is he involved in the BCCI? Who is he involved with? Let's take a look. Stevens Inc. and Systematics Inc., which is owned by Jackson Stevens, helped take over Financial General Bank shares to bring BCCI to the U.S., likely installed Systematics software. Okay. Taking you to the Newsweek article, I want to show you right here, CIA involvement. After the BCCI group gained control of First American, two men with the links to U.S. intelligence joined the board of its Washington, D.C. bank. The lobbyist, Robert Keith Gray of Hill and Knowlton, often boasted of his close relationship with the CIA's William Casey. Does anybody remember where they seen the name Robert Keith Gray, or more exactly, Hill and Knowlton? Let's take a look at this.
Came out of Kuwait. My sister, with my 5-day-old nephew, traveled across the desert to safety. There was no milk available for the baby in Kuwait. They barely escaped when their car was stuck in the desert sand, and help came from Saudi Arabia. I stayed behind and wanted to do something for my country. The second week after an invasion, I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew.
Nayira's testimony was rebroadcast across the country and marked a turning point in public opinion on going to war. President George H.W. Bush repeatedly cited her claims.
They had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
3 months after Nayira testified, President George H.W. Bush launched the invasion of Iraq. But it turned out Nayira's claims weren't true. No human rights group or news outlet could confirm what she said. It also turned out Nayira was not just any Kuwaiti teenager. She was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States, Saad Nasir al-Sabah. She had been coached by the public relations firm Hill & Knowlton, which was working for the Kuwaiti government.
Washington Post. Burt Lance, the former budget director, was named as defendant in a suit filed yesterday alleging that he and others are using illegal means to try to get control of Washington's second largest banking company, Financial General Bank shares. Besides Lance, the defendants includes Arkansas financier Jackson Stevens, a member of the executive committee and a major fundraiser. Also named in the suit are Stevens Incorporated. Now, as you heard from that video that you just watched, Hills and Knowlton, working for the Kuwaiti government, also a part of BCCI, also working with the CIA. As you can see, all of this intertwines with each other. CIA, BCCI was used for money laundering of drug profits, so that money could go to the Contras in Nicaragua, and all centered around this guy right here, Jackson Stevens. Now, let's continue on. 1988, first American's name came up unexpectedly in a criminal trial in Miami. Evidence showed that BCCI executives had helped Manuel Noriega launder drug money through an account at First American. Yes, absolutely. All of this. And you're going to take a look at Mr. Jackson Stevens right now. So I just wanted to refresh your memory. We were talking about Stevens and systematics. So let's take a look at systematics. Systematics. Right here. What were they involved in? Let's see. The Inslaw affair. That's exactly what Danny Casolaro was investigating. And the main article from BCCI, Stevens Incorporated, which was later on bought out or became Alltel. Okay, so let us see links between the Jackson Stevens financial empire and the Riyadi family, who have Chinese intelligence connections. We're going to be taking a look at the possible connection to Yang Enterprises. That's going to be an important part of our presentation coming up. Rose Law Firm. Yes, Hillary Clinton's Rose Law Firm. Hillary Clinton. Vince Foster. Okay. Let's keep going here. So it talks about Riyadi and Yang Industries being involved in, let's see, anonymous source first mentioned PROMIS and systematics in 1995. In 1995, new suspicions arose concerning the use of PROMIS in the world banking system. One post on the internet charged, rather sarcastically, that Systematics, a subsidiary of Alltech Corporation, comprised of Systematics Financial Services, Systematics Information Services, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Systematics Telecommunication Services. Okay. They had modified the PROMIS software for sale to private banks with the attendant backdoors to allow the NSA to spy on banking operations. Webster Hubble, that's another name we're going to take a look at. Let's go on to a few other things here real quick. Alltel Corporation, Systematics, political connections, Jackson T. Stevens of Little Rock, Arkansas. Clark joined the Stevens Group as a managing director for merchant banking in mid-2001. Little Rock data analysis. And let's see, let me see if I remember everything here. Be looking at the Valdosta connection to all this surrounding Alltel. And as you can see, there's other people that made a connection between Casolaro and Valdosta for a reason. And it happens to do with Mr. Raymond Lemi and how he died. And we're going to look at what happened to Mr. Raymond Lemi. What was he working on? What was he investigating? And then we're going to go beyond that. And we're going to go take a look at a guy named Hank Asher after all of that. Here's some stuff that I had to look up that was no longer available on the internet. We had to go to the Wayback Machine to find this stuff. And we're talking about Hillary Clinton and Vince Foster. And according to this story right here, an Office of Independent Counsel note lists the name of Robert Maxwell along with the initials Webster Lee Hubble, Vince Foster, Hillary Clinton, and the word systematics. Systematics. Yes. So, do you know who it was who funded pretty much at the very end of Bill Clinton's campaign to become president? That's right. Jackson T. Stevens. This page is no longer available on the internet, and it's not even, it has been, what's the word I'm looking for the other archive site? It's not even included. It even says it's not included. I had to go to this archive to get this particular web page here. Congress about Vince Foster, Barry Seal, and I wish I could get, oh, here we go. Maybe I can't. So let me see if I can, how do I get this off here? Well, I'm going to have to turn it this way and read it to you. So, CIA lied to Congress about Vince Foster, Barry Seal, and the Inslaw scandal. Earlier this week, Ronald Kessler opened an old can of worms for the FBI. In the course of his research, he discovered that several FBI reports about the death of Vince Foster have gone missing from the National Archives, which they have dubbed it Filegate. And right here, one of the names that is mentioned in Danny Casolaro's handwritten notes is a guy by the name of Charles Hayes or Chuck Hayes. And he happens to be mentioned in here. Goes on, Chuck Hayes. Leach wanted to get down to the bottom of it and either verify or disapprove the claims that were being made. In addition to the allegations about the money being laundered, there were accusations that modified versions of PROMIS were being used to monitor bank accounts and aid in the money laundering process. These allegations came from a number of sources, but most unique was Charles Hayes, known as Chuck Hayes to his friends. Hayes was a source for the journalist Danny Casolaro, who died under suspicious circumstances. Hayes claimed to be a CIA operative and technical expert who was used for special hacking jobs by the CIA. So, goes on to just all the stuff. Vince Foster, while there had been unease around the death of Vince Foster since it happened, It wasn't until a senior editor at Forbes magazine, Fostergate, blah, blah, so on, so forth. And Foster, according to Norman, had become a silent behind-the-scenes overseer on behalf of the NSA for a small Little Rock, Arkansas bank data processing company. Its name was Systematics. Foster's links to covert arms and drug transfers, along with the covert movements of money, had been discovered by Bob Bickel. And yes, Bob Bickel files are in Danny Casolaro's, what you're going to get if you download the files for yourself. He was an undercover investigator. There was communications with Danny Casolaro, and are being recovered and will be explored in future articles, so on and so forth. The Iran-Contra Barry Seal connection about Mr. Barry Seal's Mena, Arkansas, and Nellie or Nela, depends on how you pronounce it, because it's spelled Nella, but it's pronounced Nellie. And this was an airstrip in Arkansas that Barry Seal was using to drop drugs out of an airplane. Okay? These are in the notes in Danny Casolaro's files. It was which Barry Seal, much of it which was coordinated from Mena, Arkansas. Information on the Barry Seal case has remained sketchy for years. He was a CIA asset. He worked for the CIA. Going on down the line. Okay, let's move on. I just wanted to show you. There's also some other interesting stuff about Vince Foster's. There was some files that he had that got put into a safe that had to do with the continuity of government and systematic files. That's all the secretary mentioned that she knew about. She said the continuity of government and systematic files. What possible reason would Vince Foster have continuity of government files for? Very interesting, considering that he was working with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton was president. What was going on? Let's move on to some other interesting pieces, because now we got to kind of shift to this whole Valdosta thing, and I'm going to show you how it leads to. Does anybody know how Danny Casolaro died? West Virginia, in a motel, August 10th, 1991. He was found in a bathtub with his wrist and arms cut, with a razor and a note. Allegedly, he left behind a note. Okay, let's go take a look at the Valdosta case. And we're going to see how an individual is going to materialize out of that story and is going to lead us towards Podesta. Let's take a look. Enterprises, or YEI, a Florida technology contractor. And we just saw that regarding Jackson Stevens. And when we come down here, there is an individual who worked for Yang Enterprises named Clint Curtis. Clint Curtis blew the whistle on illegal activities that he witnessed related to Chinese espionage. Yes. And right here, one of Yee's clients, where he learned from FDOT employees Mavis Georgalis, that YEA had been overbilling the agency. Curtis made a report to FDOT Inspector General Investigator Ray Lemi about Yang Enterprises. Ultimately, Yang Enterprises is at the center of several important conspiracies. The company played a role in election rigging, helping a high-level Republican develop a prototype for computerized election theft. YEI's role in Chinese espionage and protection from prosecution is part of the corrupt relationship. that Chinese industry and intelligence, I'm thinking all about a certain election. And you look at all of the figures that are involved here. Could they have done it again just a couple of years ago? Intelligence has with both political parties. See also the relationship between Arkansas billionaire Jackson T. Stevens and the Riyadi family. More speculatively, UEI might be connected to the Inslaw affair. It provided software to governments and corporations with wiretapping backdoors, just like PROMIS. And child sex trafficking. It was an IT contractor for Florida's foster care system that allegedly got Henry Nee a false social security number for an immigrant trafficking ring in Valdosta, South Georgia. So here is the story of investigator Raymond Lemi, who was investigating not only the Yang Enterprises, and it took him to the child sex trafficking ring out of Valdosta, Georgia. Here is what happened to him. Clint Curtis, the one who blew the whistle that got the investigation rolling into Yang Enterprises that is associated with Jackson Stevens. Now, mind you, think about this a second, everybody. If Danny Casolaro died because he was finding out information about Arkansas that could have taken down their presidential hopeful, Bill Clinton, and anybody that was associated with Bill Clinton, this guy right here, Raymond Lemi, was on. He even stated that he made the big break in the case in his investigation, and he was getting ready to return to expose it. And it had to do with Altel, which is the subsidiary or the subsidiary linked with Systematics of Jackson T. Stevens. Here is what wound up happening to Raymond Lemi. The case of the mysterious suicide of Raymond Lemi of the Florida Inspector General's office was reopened by Valdosta, Georgia police last December, shortly after we broke the story of computer programmer Clint Curtis' sworn affidavit charging that he had built a vote rigging software prototype at the request of Representative Tom Feeney, Republican of Florida. Furthermore, graphic and disturbing photos from the crime scene said in the original police report to have not existed due to failure in the camera's flash memory cards have recently been published on the web. They somehow miraculously were able to obtain them with software from the cards, the flash memory cards. If you click the link, I will leave you guys links in the description box. If I show these pictures, I won't be able to show them all to you. Let's just do this, okay? We'll go here. We're not going to look at them all because there's some of them that will get my channel taken down if I do, okay? We'll just look at just some of these, all right? You're going to see the front door. You're going to see a TV with a water bottle. You're going to see, that, like I said, chairs. There's the TV with the water bottle. There's that. Here is the note on the pad, just like Danny Casolaro did. Here is the note, very obscure note at that. And here it says, I love my family with all my heart. I am sorry, I am depressed and in pain. Yeah. There's the bathroom. There's the scene, and there we'll stop right there, okay? We'll stop right there. But guess how he died, folks? Hold on. Let me see if we can repeat the exact same freaking scenario that happened with Danny Casolaro. A motel room. in the bathtub, slit his wrist and his arms. Yet with this individual right here, there was bruising around his neck. That's why originally the cops claimed that they were unable to retrieve the pictures from the flash memory cards. And you know what else is interesting? Is that the Georgia Tech, or the college that the female cop who was covering all this up, she happened to go work for the very corporation that was involved in the university that is Alltel. Jackson Stevens. Yes, it's all connected. And let me see here. Let me go back to here. And you're going to see what they talk about. Has confirmed the legitimacy of the photos, but has so far failed to explain several inconsistencies that the photos and materials from the supplementary detective reports reveal when compared to the original police report. Supplementary evidence from the reports would seem to indicate that Lemi was not even in Valdosta, Georgia at the time that the motel receipts show that he had checked into the room. Furthermore, involvement from the Florida Department of Transportation may have led to the quick reclosing of the case shortly after it was recently reopened. And if you go through this right here, in Curtis's 2001 complaint to the IG's office filed along with another Florida Department of Transportation whistleblower, he charged, no, that can't be FDOT, whatever. He charged that an illegal Chinese alien was working at and committing espionage out of YEI and was illegally overbilling. And why did he end up in Valdosta, where there was a child sex ring, and Alltel happens to be based out of Valdosta, Georgia? Let's take a look at this. Valdosta sex ring allegations. It all came out after an arrest of this guy named John Cooey, a Florida state offender who raped and murdered a 9-year-old Jessica Lunsford before fleeing to Georgia. What is interesting about this is that evidence was mounting that the father of Jessica Lunsford was involved in a sex ring out of Valdosta. And you can read this in this article. It's long and lengthy. I've read it. It took a lot of work. There's a story about the sex ring from a Coggins or some farm. Right here. The sex ring allegations are quite complex, drawing in aspects of the gang enterprises. Coggins Farms was involved in bringing underage girls, illegal immigrant girls, for sex and other sex slaves to Coggins Farms, where they were being kept in cages and locked up in barns and different stuff like that. And it was also found that Jessica Lunsford's father had some kind of connection to this sex ring. And we'll go down here. Raymond Lemi death. Building off their claims about Henry Nee, Kaler in the two articles also connected the death of Florida State investigator Ray Lemi to the sex ring. Lemi was investigating political corruption, contract fraud, Chinese espionage, and Lemi was found dead of a suspicious suicide. You know, just like Gary Webb shot himself 2 times in the head when he was reporting on the cocaine epidemic and how the government was involved in supplying Rick Ross with cocaine and blah, blah, blah. And you know the story. Another suspicious suicide. Yes, they committed suicide because they were depressed, or they hated life, or they hated themselves, but they didn't hate the people that they were investigating. Is that how we're supposed to believe it happened? Anyway. So now I'm going to show you here, and I did not show it to you. Kaler also named Chambliss. Chambliss' name is in Danny Casolaro's handwritten notes. but placed him in a larger Dixie Mafia network that involved Georgia businessmen such as the Coggins family and top Republican politicians. Ultimately, both of them agreed that there was high-level political support for the Valdosta sex ring, which, according to Hayworth and Schmidt, led to state and federal investigations, grand jury probes being shut down on orders. You hear that right? From the White House. Yes, from the White House. Huh. Kershaw pointed to irregularities in how Cooey's case was handled by Florida law enforcement, indicating an apparent attempt to protect Cooey and cover up the sex ring. He said that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement broke Megan's law by failing to inform the Citrus County Sheriff's Office that Cooey was a repeat sex offender, causing a delay in their response. And he cited anonymous sources in the Citrus County Sheriff's Office as saying there was a high-level interference from D.C. and Tallahassee in the Cooey case, and it involves others. And in fact, there was troubling evidence in the case that pointed directly at the Lunsford family. Much of it came up after Cooey was a suspect. Certain aspects of the abductions bore the hallmarks of an inside job. From the beginning, it was acknowledged that there was no sign of forced entry. In fact, the door to the Lunsford home was actually unlocked. The Lunsford family owned a dog, but it did not bark during the time Cooey was in the house. Quite possibly an indication that either knew Cooey or others were involved in removing Jessica, and there was no evidence of a struggle in the actual abduction itself, to the point that Jessica was allowed to take a stuffed dolphin with her. Her autopsy showed no injuries other than those caused by the sexual assault and being buried alive. More damning evidence was found on Mark Lunsford's computer. When Mark's computer was examined right after Jessica's abduction, the police found child porn. Lunsford denied he had viewed any child porn pictures and claimed that he got onto his computer inadvertently through pop-ups. But they were found in the delete bin, indicating he had consciously downloaded the images before deleting them. Law enforcement was surprisingly unconcerned about this discovery. In fact, Sheriff Jeff Dawsey and the state's attorney office refused to pursue any criminal charges. The excuse was that Mark only had a limited amount of child porn and had been through enough. Of course, remember, there was a squash put on this whole thing coming from the White House. But do you know what? Here's where an interesting figure is going to come into the equation. Let's take a look at Hank Asher. Asher was involved in drug running during the Iran-Contra and was never charged even when he was caught by the DEA. And he was known as a CIA asset, only to be reborn as the pioneering computer programmer known as the father of data fusion. He was the multimillionaire whose creations now power a new reality where your every move is tracked by police departments, intelligence agencies, political parties, and finance firms alike. And guess what kind of software matrix that he used to do it? PROMIS. Yes, but let's go take a look at the credentials of the drug-running CIA asset, Hank Asher. As you can see, fell in with a group of drug smugglers in the 1980s and got into a lot of trouble, though he was never convicted of a felony. Yet he was a pilot, and he was running drugs for the CIA during the Iran-Contra affair, and he never received a felony because he was a CIA asset. That is very important to our presentation because of another person who's going to be at the same location that he is at the same time, who happens to have a top secret security clearance. Let's take a look at this. Company, Cecent, received the contract to develop Matrix, a privatized version of the Total Information Awareness Program with the intent of identifying suspect terrorists living in the U.S. Michael Green claims that Matrix was based on the PROMIS software. Asher was a programmer for the CIA, their best hacker, and someone who wrote all AI-based data mining software, and that he developed the clicker system to steal the 2012 election for Mitt Romney. Well, does Mr. Hank Asher fit into the Valdosta child sex ring story? What did he do? And it's right here. Asher played a minor but suspicious role in the John Cooey case in which 9-year-old Jessica Lunsford of Florida was abducted, raped, and buried alive. Though serial pedophile John Cooey was portrayed as the lone perpetrator, the evidence pointed to a much larger and well-connected pedophile underground. One of the people implicated in that network was Jessica's father. Certain aspects of the abduction pointed to an inside job, and Mark was found with child pornography on his computer. So on. We already read that earlier. Following Jessica's murder, Lunsford set up a foundation in her name, which was plagued by accusations of misappropriation of funds to Lunsford's own personal benefit. At the same time, he attempted to sue the police for mishandling the investigation into Jessica's disappearance. Public sentiment turned against him, and they suspected that Lunsford was simply trying to profit from his daughter's death. Hank Asher then stepped into Lunsford's life and offered him a $100,000 a year salary to close down the lawsuit, close down the foundation. Why? Because the White House was already squashing the story and did not want Lunsford bringing back up stuff that could be revealing anything about the sex ring. Hank Asher came in under probably orders from the CIA. Get this guy out of the way. Hank Asher offered him a job, gave him money here, and help Asher fight for child advocacy instead. Asher's motives can only be speculated on, but his intervention in Lunsford's life prevented an ugly re-examination of this Valdosta case in court and in the public eye. Guess where Hank Asher went to? Anybody want to guess? Anybody? Nobody? Take a look at this. He was the director for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children from 2000 and 2013. A CIA programmer with most likely, because he was involved in the Iran-Contra drug running scheme, most likely has a top secret security clearance. But do you know who else was with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that had a freaking top secret security clearance? Take a look at this guy right here. The well-known relative of those people associated with who? That's right, the Clintons. Do you see how Jackson Stevens connects to the Clintons? How Jackson Stevens connects to the Valdosta through the Yang Enterprises and Alltel? And an individual who was investigating Yang Enterprises and the Valdosta sex ring wound up suicided in the exact same way that Danny Casolaro was, leading me to believe that the same reason why Mr. Raymond Lemi was killed is for the same exact reason why Danny Casolaro was killed, because of the Bill Clinton and the Jackson Stevens connection. Yes, BCCI. All you see with Danny Casolaro's files right there, I just showed you. BCCI connected to Jackson Stevens, Jackson Stevens supplied $3.5 million to boost Bill Clinton up to win that presidency. And they knew their boy was going to run. They didn't want anything to foul that up. Danny Casolaro was threatening to screw that over, for lack of better words. I'm trying to think what I want to say. Do you guys get it? Do you see all the connection? And it leads all the way up to Hank Asher being asked to step in to get this guy to shut up, because there was already a White House squash on the Valdosta sex ring, because, that's right, Jackson Stevens connections not only to the Clintons, but to the Bushes, because you got to remember, the Bushes were involved with the Franklin cover-up, Democrats and Republicans alike, and they were all looking out for each other. And the fact is, Jackson Stevens is the main person right there of interest in all of this right here. And it all stems from Danny Casolaro's BCCI. Thanks, everybody.